It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote for this morning, Omoju Miller. Omoju is technical advisor to the CEO at Github. Her expertise is in the area of machine learning and computational intelligence. Previously, Omoju co-led Google's non-profit investment in computer science education and served as a volunteer advisor to the Obama administration's White House Presidential Innovation Fellows. Omoju joined GitHub in 2017 to help build recommendation engines for the popular open source software development platform. She took on the role of technical advisor to the CEO in January 2020. Originally from Lagos, Nigeria, Omoju holds a doctoral degree in computer science education from UC Berkeley. Please join me in welcoming Omoju.
I am ready for my slides. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. Today, I want to talk to you about cognitive apprenticeship in the context of open source communities of practice. My name is Omoju Miller. I am the technical advisor to the CEO at GitHub, the home of open source. I am very happy to be able to join with you all today and present at the Australian Linux conference. I'm sure many of you know what GitHub is, but just in case there are people watching who are not familiar with GitHub, we are a collaborative work platform whose killer app is the building of software. What you are looking at is where the world builds software. This is GitHub's homepage, where we animate the globe to show a few features of folks building software around the world. Each of the arcs you see on the globe is a pull request that has been merged. You can see people collaborating with each other around the world. You literally see the subsets of those people whose goal it is to accelerate human progress. That's our goal at GitHub. Our goal is to accelerate human progress. And on the globe, those arcs are a physical manifestation of people doing that across geographical borders, across national borders, from Croatia to Australia and so forth. I urge you all to just go to the GitHub homepage and click on a few of those links and see what people are building right now. I'm sure you've all seen this by now. It's the picture seen around the world. Came out, I think it was 2019. The first ever picture of a black hole. There is no telescope powerful enough to capture this image on its own. So the scientists who created this image used a network of telescopes all over the planet to collect a huge amount of the data. They then spent years processing that data to produce this image. The Event Horizon Telescope project had hundreds of people on the core team. But we at GitHub wanted to know how many other people contributed to all of the open source on which it was built. And the answer is incredible. Over 21,000. This image that needed a planet-sized telescope also needed a truly planet-sized team. That is the magic of open source. This isn't just the story of one project. This is the story of almost every project. As Dr. Bowman, who led the team, put it, the developers who are committing to your repo are just the tip of the iceberg. We call this your direct contributors. When we go below the waterline are all the people who contribute to your dependencies. Now you might be thinking that the Event Horizon Telescope team is an outlier, that they wrote their code in Python, that they had to use lots of high-level libraries. That 21,000 number must be atypically high. We were curious too, so we sampled 1,000 of the most popular repos on GitHub and ran the query. And we discovered that on average, these projects had more than 74,403 community contributors. It is truly remarkable to consider how far we have come in the last 20 years in open source. 20 years ago, almost all companies would not use open source software, and this was for very, very valid reasons. This quote by Tim O'Reilly in 1998 sums up how many companies felt about open source software. The quote goes, "A year ago, if you had asked the IS manager at a large company about free software," that's what they used to call open source back then, "he would have told you that he didn't use it, that it was unsupported. He might say that it wasn't even robust enough and certainly not commercial quality." Interestingly, today, approximately 90% of all code in enterprise software comes from open source. In 22 years, open source software has gone from a fringe hobby to how Fortune 500 corporations build software. Over time, open source won, but the criticism levied against it were valid. When it comes to building robustness, we've come to learn that the small pieces loosely joined together has proven to be a winning approach. For example, core internet infrastructure is designed in this fashion and relies on open source software. The redundancies we built into the system are what have allowed us to scale. That final concern of Tim's manager from 1998, that open source projects are not supported, is very valid. For example, back then, if a graduate student created an open source package, chances are they may not continue to maintain it once they graduated. But now there are novel ways to compensate open source maintainers. Last year at GitHub, we launched GitHub Sponsors Program as a way for developers who have been working freely for all of us to get compensated for the work that they do by all of us. But what makes open source communities interesting isn't just the fact of the code is free, but more importantly, it is their architecture of participation, specifically the process of bringing newcomers into the community. Another way of understanding open source is through the lens of situated learning, or as a form of cognitive apprenticeship. In this talk, I want to focus specifically on the newbie learners who are new to both open source as well as software development. What I want to do is map out the journey of such a person. Let's call them Ashoka. Ashoka is learning to code, and she's doing so by learning Python. Her goal is to one day become a software developer. Why is any of this even important? It is important because open source is permissionless, and there are really no limits to what you can learn. And unlike other communities of practice, almost all work that is done in open source is done in the open. Further, open source is a key factor in accelerating human progress, as we have seen in the black hole image. With that, the question before us now is, what does the journey from being a newbie dev to perhaps eventually becoming a maintainer or a lead contributor to a project look like? But before I delve into that, let's take a step back and understand what learning is. From theories of situated learning, we are told that it is the process of becoming a full practitioner in a community of practice, and that it involves two kinds of production. The first, the production of continuity with the practice itself, and the second, the displacement of the practice of the old-timers. For example, it is our newbie learner being able to fully say that they are now a member of the Python community, that they understand the norms, that they use the language and generally know where to find other Pythonistas. The old timers are the core developers and maintainers of the different Python packages and the programming language itself. These are all the people who make up the community. These are the folks that have created the norms of work. They are the ones that have commit access to the repos. They are the ones that decide they are deprecating a version of the language and so forth. Together with the other contributors in the community, they produce the continuity of the practice. They are actually the ones doing the work to make this community of practice going. But eventually, the core folks will get replaced as new people come into the community and take that journey from newbie to old timer. In this context, the process of learning is the journey from project newbie to project maintainer. It is the journey of being a casual contributor, that is, fixing a bug here or there, then becoming a contributor that contributes frequently to the project, who coordinates the activity with other contributors and so forth. And then it is eventually spending more and more time on the project to the point that they may become a core contributor and might even earn some income in that role. For some folks, they go beyond that and eventually become one of the maintainers of the project. The process of going from the casual contributor to the maintainer can be a process of learning through cognitive apprenticeship. The important thing to note here is that it is learning in practice. From the paper, Situated Learning in Communities of Practice, June Lave quotes one of her colleagues, Becker, who observes that apprentice learners are surrounded by the characteristic activities of their trade. Apprentices have the opportunity to see community practice in its complexity early on and have a broader idea of what it is about than just the particular task in which they're engaged or that they are most easily observable. This appears to be central to processes of learning and apprenticeship. He goes on to suggest that as a consequence of the accessibility of the full round of activities, the apprentice makes his or her own curriculum. Apprenticeship thus provides an individualized and a realistic learning setting. Many of these claims are true of open source communities. Anyone who is new to open source is able to see all the work done because it is done in the open. You can read all the issues, participate in the debates, read software that others have written, attend events, make your own suggestions, and so forth. And just as Lev noted, the apprentice has to make their own curriculum. There is no formal school or curriculum that teaches you how to become a full participant in open source. And that's actually the beauty of it. It is all done in the process of the doing. You jump in and figure things out by stumbling first, and then eventually you find your feet. But there are a few things that can help. There are a few things that we can do to make it easier for newcomers. One of the things we can do to make it easier for newcomers is to model our open source communities after those that have successfully reproduced themselves. From cognitive apprenticeship, we learned that there are 3 characteristics that make this possible. The first, the community needs to furnish newcomers with comprehensive goals. Then, the newcomers have to have an initial view of the whole project. And lastly, they provide newcomers with near peers and exemplars of mature practice. I will go further and add, when possible, the community should pair newcomers with near peers on small sprints to get them going. These are the characteristics of communities of practice that reproduce themselves successfully. Let's take the first characteristic and actualize it in the context of open source. Some communities already do this by assigning good first issue labels to their issues. While this is great and it's a start in the right direction, it isn't enough because it doesn't tell you the level of skill needed to actually complete and close an issue. In my mind, while giving that comprehensive goal, I think an improvement on using labels like the good first issues will be to create new labels that correspond to some software, that correspond kind of to software engineering ladder. For example, there could be an issue with the label of associate engineer tag. So you have like something like associate engineer as a label, software engineer 1 as a label, software engineer 2, all the way to principal and something like that. This is one idea that people may play with to see if it helps solve the contributor to issue matching problem. The reason why this one is very important is there are many people who are excited and want to participate in open source, but they don't know if they have the skill set necessary to close the ticket that they've picked. We can help them do that by adding some experiential label to each of the issues. 2, the other second characteristics of healthy open source communities, the newcomers have to have an initial view of the whole project. I see the cryptocurrency community do this one exceptionally well. Most of their open source projects have white papers attached where they tell you where they're ultimately going. They also have a lot of progress reports through podcasts, videos, and so forth that lets anyone know where they are in the life cycle of the project. It would be really wonderful if other communities of practice adopted this from people in crypto. And 3, good, healthy communities that successfully reproduce themselves provide newcomers with near peers and exemplars of mature practice. I think this one is by far the hardest habit to tackle because of the decentralized nature of open source communities. I think we at GitHub perhaps may have a role to play here with this matching problem with regards to near peers, but I will say that the emphasis is on may. With respect to matching newcomers with exemplars of mature practice, there are many ways that we've done this successfully as open source communities. One that comes to mind is Google's Summer of Code project. It naturally creates an environment where someone can see what the mature practice of being a software engineer on a large project that is open source looks like. Further, there are many communities that share their process of work. There are many people on Twitch who stream themselves writing code. There are many people also streaming themselves writing code on YouTube. These are all valid ways for a newcomer to see exemplars of mature practice. We are so fortunate to be living in this era where the organizing unit is the online community. 20 years ago, or perhaps 30 years ago, it would have been impossible to see exemplars of mature practice in software development if you were not related to the software developer yourself. But the world that we've created today allows us to do that beautifully. One of the greatest things about open source is that you don't have to be a software developer to participate in an open source community. Many people start their journey in open source by organizing meetups, attending meetups. I'm sure today there are some people who are with us in this conference who are just starting their journey, and the start of their journey is this conference. If there's an open source project you're excited about, you can organize events for it. I see this happen all the time, where those who are most passionate about the project, who might initially be on the periphery, but have a yearning to deepen their engagement with the project, start by organizing learning clubs or meetups designed specifically to create learning pods where newbies support each other on their journey. A great example of this is the Free Code Camp community. The interesting thing about this community is it has over 4,000 contributors, and it is a community designed specifically to onboard people into the professional work of software development, and they've done so successfully, and it's all open source. All the work is done in the open. Another way that a newbie journeys to become a master is to start a small engagement with the project by sponsoring the project. This allows you to continue to pay attention to the project, and more importantly, it allows you a means of being generative to the community. So maybe you don't quite have a good grasp on the programming language that the project is written in, but you care about the project. You want to be generative to the project. You should consider sponsoring the project. Another role that folks play in open source is triaging issues in the project. This is a very simple thing to do, but can be very, very time consuming. Some of us, some of my colleagues have actually written machine learning apps, GitHub apps, that help to automatically predict what label an issue should have, so you can do like auto triaging for them. There are many maintainers who spend the significant amount of their time just going through issues and figuring out who and where the issue should go to. So this is a very important role as one becomes a deeper contributor to a project. Another role that people play as they make this progress into a community is responding to mailing list questions. One of the key indicators of health for a project is how long it takes to turn around open tasks that require action, like answering questions, code review, and merging pull requests. As a person goes from the periphery of the project, like the casual contributor or someone who only sponsors the project, to someone who has a deeper engagement with the project, one way to deepen your engagement without necessarily writing code is to help manage the mailing list and the online communities around the project. As our newbie Ashoka is gaining their wings, we see them make this progress from a monthly engaged non-coding contributor to perhaps a weekly engaged. Every week they're engaging with the project in a non-coding capacity, to eventually engaging with the project in a coding capacity by answering questions, even without having commit access to the code base. One can contribute technical knowledge back to the community by answering questions on platforms like Stack Overflow. This is something that a lot of people find daunting, not because they do not know the answers to the question, but since it's open source, all our work is in the open. There might be negative feedback and people might be unkind. Just let's all take a moment that it takes a lot of bravery and courage to share your knowledge in public, and so let's practice a bit of kindness. In learning theory, This process of question answer of teaching, reciprocal teaching, is actually one of the key indicators of transfer, that is, expertise. It is the attainment of knowledge to an extent that you can teach it back to someone else. As you explain a solution to somebody else, it helps you, the learner, grow in competency and gives you external credibility to the rest of the community. And as with all things in open source, this is also permissionless. No one can stop anyone from answering questions. When a person is ready, they can start sharing their knowledge with the community by actually helping others on board into the community and giving clarity. As the journey continues, our newbie will now no longer be a newbie. At this point, if you're answering questions, you're engaging with the mailing list, you are a solid journey person in that community of practice. They then start contributing code-based activities to the project by making code commits, opening pull requests, and perhaps submitting pull request reviews. Many people stop at this stage, but some others want an even deeper engagement, so they become maintainers of the project. This is where the newcomers come in and displace the old timers. Some go further, and this becomes the only thing that they do professionally. All the steps that I have outlined don't have to happen in the sequence that I outlined them. But this is one of the ways that a novice can go from being an outsider to an old-timer. And this is the process of cognitive apprenticeship within the context of open source. But more importantly, why is this even important? The most important part of what I've outlined is that for the most part, becoming a weekly engaged coding contributor to an open source project is a permissionless way of becoming a software engineer. This path puts you in a place where you practice situated learning, where you can learn on the job with very little negative consequence. It also allows you to seize your power and do your bit to create the future. Conventional education is being disrupted, and future developers don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year learning institution in order to start adding technical value to society. And for those in school, open source creates a part where they don't have to wait till they have their accreditation before they start adding value. So the question I'm going to leave all of us with is, if you are part of an open source community, could you practice the 3 characteristics to make your community successful and figure out a clearer, tighter way to onboard newcomers and hopefully share that process with other communities so we can get the work of accelerating human progress going even faster? Thank you. That brings me to the end of my talk.
Thank you, Omoju. That was fantastic. And I've been watching the chat and seeing everyone having their "it me" kind of moments going, about, coming into LCA years ago and not knowing anything, and just the community sort of getting around those people and them, being exposed to it and learning and coming on that journey themselves has just been really fantastic to see. There was a couple of questions. Sorry, I'm just getting Betsy sending them through to me at the moment.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one we've got here is, how do we better support contributors at the higher end of the ladder to take on leadership roles?
I think a lot of automation is going to be necessary here, because many people, I've heard this from so many contributors at the higher end of the ladder, A lot of people are opening pull requests on their projects. And they're finding that the pull requests that are being opened, the quality of the PRs are not quite up to the quality of what they're looking for. So they can't merge them back into main. And they don't have enough time to actually give the necessary feedback of why this is not good enough. One of the things open source maintainers and open leveling up contributors at the higher end should completely embrace is DevOps. Having CI built into your repo, things that you can automate and can give feedback so that when somebody opens a pull request, it has to go through all the different checks. Everything has to turn green so that when it's green, then you know it has met all the criteria you've set up. And then you can then spend time doing the pull request review and then giving feedback.
Yep.
Just DevOps, just do as much automation as you can in your build process.
Yes, I love it. Speaking my language. Okay, we've got another one. How do we bridge the gap between being a maintainer and being a mentor that can train and grow new contributors?
I think it's actually very challenging to do both and do both well. So if I was the maintainer and I was the sole maintainer of the project, you can't actually be the mentor. What you can do in mentorship is actually the most effective mentors are the near peers of the person you're mentoring. So if you're a maintainer and you want to mentor someone, the only person that is actually giving you the bang for the buck is for you to mentor the commit access contributors, people who are actually doing the most work. The best way to mentor is get the near mentors together. And this is where the matching problem is difficult because you need to figure out someone that is slightly ahead of you is the best kind of mentor for you. But most of us don't know that. So we think if I want to work on Linux, Linus Torvald is the best mentor. Sorry, my camera just went out. It'll be right back. Linus is not the best mentor because he's an expert and he's so far removed from the challenges of a newbie. Your best mentor is someone that is 6 months ahead of you.
Right. Yeah. Cool. All right. Another question we've got from the audience. With the changes this past year due to the pandemic, do you see overlap in steps to facilitate people joining and people moving to more online work?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the work that a lot of us are doing who have not done work in open source before, a lot of people are picking up the practices of doing work in the open. Open source has always been remote friendly. It had to be. That's the whole point of the thing. And everybody now is learning how to do remote work. As they become masters at remote work, it is a lot easier to onboard in open source because the practices and habits are not novel. They're just now what you just do at work or you do at school. Now you're just applying it to a different set of communities.
Yep. Is there a write-up of this thesis somewhere that we can refer to when bringing this to our projects?
Ooh la la. I'm sure there is, but I don't know. I put this together. I got very excited about this because I did work in learning theory. I also do work in machine learning. And a lot of the steps are the same thing, whether it's an algorithm doing it or a human doing it. Mm-hmm. So I brought this together, but I am certain I am not the first person to think of this. So a few useful Google searches, and I'm sure we can find the thesis.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. I did see a couple of resources, books and websites and things like that in the chat as well. So I think people are sort of sharing that information as well, which is fantastic to see. Another question we have is, how do you balance time taken in encouraging newcomers with time taken reviewing and developing? Just monitoring mailing lists and IRC channels can take up 100% of my time if I let it.
It will take 100% of your time. So you have to schedule focus time. And you have to be very intentional about how much time you're spending in open source. Let's say, for example, you choose to spend 15 hours a week. Before your week starts, allot time for yourself. Of this 15 hours, 5 hours is going to be focused work. That means I'm writing code or I'm reviewing pull requests. The other 10 hours is going to be doing IRC channels. And you have to be very, very disciplined to log off and disengage from the work. Because if you don't do that, you will burn out. And that's one of the things that happens a lot in open source, where people are just burnt out and they're just waiting to hand over. And the quality of the work is not the best. They just don't want to do it anymore. We don't want you to get so burnt out. We want you to still feel fresh and invigorated. So you must really, really be aggressively stingy with your time and make sure that you spend time doing that which you care the most about. For many people who come into open source, who are software developers, you became a software developer because you wanted to write code. You don't want to be a manager talking to people all the time. So make sure you put some time together to actually write that code, so you replenish that part of you that is most passionate about the work.
Yep. Okay.
It sounds selfish, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you will burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning to say no, right? I think this is our last question. So I think we'll call it after this one. Contributors are often technical, but don't have experience in management. Any tips for helping a project to scale so it's better able to help out newcomers?
Contributors who are not managers should go and buy books and learn how to manage. It's very, very important. It is just another skill you have to learn to master. And in the meanwhile, practice kindness. Be bold enough to say, I don't know, and bring people into the community who may actually not be technical, but are fantastic managers. Hopefully you pair together and you learn how to manage and they learn how to write code.
I think that's a really fantastic answer and a really terrific point to end on. Thank you so much for your time this morning, this afternoon. It's been terrific to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye, everyone.